Having a kid rocks your world in more ways than you could ever imagine. Forget about cooking in a Michelin-star restaurant. Having to come home after a long day and put food on the table for both the adults and the kids that everyone will like is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in the kitchen. We're talking every single night, being able to produce delicious and tasty food, not to mention in my case, having some pretty tough critics to please.
You want applesauce?
Yeah, not always the most fun. But through all the struggles, I have certainly learned a few things over the years. So what I'm gonna be doing today is showing you my 4 most vital tips and skills that will help you bring together dinners for everyone in your family in under 15 minutes. Now, maybe you're one of those lucky parents where your kid just eats anything that you make. I have friends where that is the case in their household. For me, not so much. My daughter, her palate isn't quite there for everything I make, but what I have found is that she likes food done well. Doesn't mean I can just slack off and like throw some noodles in the microwave and think she's gonna eat it. So the first tip is to keep it simple, but still keep it refined. So for me and my wife, I'm making a nice shrimp pasta dish. For my daughter, I'm taking the same exact noodles, turning them into a butter noodles, but just elevating it a little bit. Since it's a 15-minute pasta dish, we're going water on, get that coming up to a boil. This will be a pan for my daughter's butter noodles. This pan right here is for the adult pasta. First things first, we have some really nice shrimp here. What I'm gonna do is pat them dry super quickly. Make sure you remove some of that moisture so they get a nice sear in the pan. And then just give them a nice liberal season with some salt and pepper until they are well coated. Next, I'm gonna heat up a nonstick pan on a medium-low heat. I'm gonna add in a good bit of butter in there and just a little bit of olive oil to protect that butter from burning. And then I'll just start layering in my shrimp and get them cooking. This is just a 1-pan pasta. You never wanna crowd your pan. And for me, for 2 people, my wife and I, that's plenty of shrimp for 1 pasta. I'm gonna take these and I'll just pop them in the fridge and they'll just salt cure overnight. And tomorrow I'll make another shrimp dish. Now we can move on to nudes. Water's boiling. These are torchietti. But the key here is to pick a shape that your kid will eat, that they enjoy. My daughter can just pick these up with her hands or use a fork. She's still like struggling on spaghetti. And I will dump all of these in there, get those going, and then back to the shrimp. So these shrimp got a pretty hard sear on the first side. So they just need about 30 seconds on the other side just to cook through. And once they're done, I'll take them out of the pan. I'll set them aside for now. And I'm gonna add in some lemon zest and just cook that in the fat for like 30 seconds to really bring out the fragrance. And then right after that, deglaze all of that flavor with some white wine. Woo. And things will get a little bit steamy, so just lean back a little bit and let that wine reduce by about half. Now these shrimp were deshelled, but I do just need to pop off the tails, and they're still super hot, so maybe a fork would have helped here. A little hot. Ow. Then I'm gonna chop up the shrimp, and as you can see, it does not have to be perfect. It's a 15-minute meal. And then finally, the last bit of prep is just taking some parsley and giving that a rough chop as well. So all the prep is done here, save this liquid. That is good flavor. Now the noodles are just about done. What I'm gonna do is take a big old scoop of them. This is where you get crafty, my friends. Same noodles into a bowl. This is still plenty for the adult dinner. Turn your heat on low. Just put that on hold for a second. Bring this over here and we'll build out this pasta. So you can see how this sauce has reduced down and we have concentrated that flavor. So at this point, that's when I'm gonna add all of my pasta directly in the pan and just let that sauce absorb into the pasta. So we've got a lot of flavor already in this white wine shrimpy sauce, but I've got a special ingredient right here. Yesterday, I picked some spring garlic, which is kind of like a young garlic, out of the garden. It looks just like this. And I turned it into a garlic pesto. It's just a pesto, but switch the ratios of basil to garlic. Heavy on the garlic. I'm gonna add a few scoops of that, really amp up the flavor. Mix that in, just melt that in nicely. Oh, yes. The garlic pesto is just a bonus, but again, the white wine sauce on its own, once you add all of this, is plenty of flavor. Just gonna add pasta water, salt, more pepper, and a little bit of Parmesan. I know cheese and fish is like an Italian no-no, but I'm fine with it. I'm done. So now this is an incredible quick 15-minute pasta, but my daughter, she's not quite there yet. So this is where we quickly bring together this pasta, but the key is just taking advantage of the things you already have. We're gonna use the same exact ingredients, just a little simpler. So I'm gonna bring over this Parmesan, this lemon, and we're gonna start with butter for your classic butter noodles. And that's where I feel like a lot of parents probably stop. Little bit of salt, and then just a little bit of pasta water to melt everything down. That starchy butter water will start to thicken very quickly and build a sauce. There you go. Once things start bubbling, the liquid is totally gone. Zest in a little lemon. Here's your carryover ingredient from the adult version. We'll go in with our Parmesan. Just a really simple, but still refined play on a butter noodle that comes together in a few minutes. Now, the first time I tried this, I was stunned at how good it was because I would never think about making something so simple. I'm always adding veggies or seafood or meat, but when you do a butter noodle like this, it is so good, and I'm telling you that your kids will appreciate just the elevated version. Adult pasta, this looks incredible. And then generally for Marley, plate like a side of noodles here, side of fruit here, side of some veggies. She likes bell peppers, but of course, you know, whatever your kids do eat. Garlicky, you got the lemon zest in there, shrimpy, fantastic weeknight quick pasta. So again, for this tip, it's not so much about what you're actually making. It's that you are figuring out a meal for the adults, a meal for the kids that are using similar ingredients, and both parties are still happy. I am certainly happy with this as a quick weeknight pasta. And Marley, well, let's see. A term that has become pretty popular in the chef world over the last few years is deconstruction, where you're taking the full meal and breaking it up into its individual components. Now that term might be a little bougie, but I find when you're cooking for kids, deconstruction is actually one of the best techniques you can use. So that is my next tip. Taking a meal that you love, that you can make quickly through the week, and then using the same ingredients, but deconstructing it into something that your kid will actually eat. Now, one thing that I found that my daughter likes is a quesadilla. Roasted cauliflower, my daughter's obsessed with it. And for me, it can easily be added onto and flavored up. So what I'm gonna do is just chop off little florets. You can, of course, get some stem in there as well. I'll toss that into a bowl. I'm gonna coat it with some avocado oil and sprinkle that with some salt, and just make sure all of those florets are nicely coated in oil. All right, now generally when it comes to cauliflower, I'll usually cook it 350 for 15 minutes. My daughter prefers the texture when it's a little softer, but since we just took a few minutes to chop that, crank it up 375 for 10 minutes. So now while that's air frying, we can make fresh salsa. Get some ingredients, as basic as it gets. Cherry tomatoes. My daughter loves these. They're nice and sweet. So I'm gonna save some of them. Again, deconstructed. We're not quite at salsa level yet. A little too much flavor for this 2-year-old. Those are for her. Red onion, garlic scapes that came off the top of this garlic that I showed you earlier. When you pick them young, these are nice and tender. Really great garlic flavor, but just use a few cloves of garlic, of course, if you don't have them. Some cilantro leaves, some lime. One more thing. Want a little spice in this. Chili sauce and salt. That was good. This took a minute and a half to make. Nice kick. Dump that in a bowl. Oh, knew that was gonna happen. Boom, there's your fresh pico. So before we assemble these quesadillas, I'm going to get my pan preheating on a medium heat. And I'm using whole wheat flour tortillas, but use whatever you have or whatever you like. And for the adult version, I'm gonna keep that whole. And then for my daughters, I'm just gonna split that in half to make a nice, easy, small folded quesadilla. I'm grating some fresh cheese over both tortillas. I'm using a mix of Gouda and cheddar, but anything melty, of course, will work. Right, we should be just about, yeah, those are looking great. Pop those in here. So I'm gonna put this fresh cauliflower straight from the air fryer right onto the adult quesadilla. If needed, you can chop it up into smaller pieces so it fits on there nicely. Then I will add a little bit more cheese to the top just to seal everything in, and a few scoops of that fresh salsa. Then I'll place another flour tortilla on top, and we are ready to toast and melt. So we've got the adult quesadilla taking up the entire pan. We still need to cook the kids' quesadilla, just the plain cheese. We'll dump these. To save time, since it's a 15-minute meal, give it a little spray just to lubricate. Boom. Pop that in. 375, 3 minutes. So now while everything's cooking, I'm gonna chop up some of those reserved tomatoes. This is the deconstruction part. And a little bit of that cauliflower into nice bite-sized pieces for Marley.
Quesadilla, just about done. Turn the heat off of that. You should be good. Oh, look at that timing. Oh, okay. Well, it didn't get like super brown. It certainly got melty in there and crispy. Cut these into like tiny little bite-sized pieces for her. So don't get me wrong, there are meals where she might just be getting a quesadilla. But ideally you can get some balance in a dinner. This would be your deconstructed salsa, just tomatoes, and the parents will certainly enjoy that.
I trust that there will be a day where Marley is taking down a full flavored quesadilla. That is so good. That is great. Cauliflower and quesadilla works perfectly. But in the meantime, as a 2-year-old, deconstruction is key. She can handle these textures and flavors on their own, whereas everything together is just a little too much.
You like your quesadilla?
Every parent knows that the hardest thing to get your kids to eat is vegetables. Just a fact. There's no way around it. But what I have found is you can slip or sneak vegetables into different meals, different dishes. Get them a little more nutrients in their diet. Broccoli, of course, is well known as probably the most hated kid vegetable of all. So I'm gonna make a little dip with it, but then use that dip for an adult meal. The first thing I'm gonna do is steam the broccoli. I step on that. Boom. Not only is this amazing for efficiency, but I can film so easily, one hand. So I'll get that on a boil and I'll chop up some broccoli. So the first thing I'm gonna do is rattle through this broccoli. I'm gonna cut off the florets and then you can get some stem in there as well. Basically, we just need these pieces small enough so they will blend nicely in a food processor. All right, I don't know if this is a technique, but I'm like half boil, half steam because I don't have a steamer basket. So I'll just cover that 2 minutes, 3 minutes until it's cooked through. So this is my chance to build out an adult component to this dish. So yesterday I snatched some fresh kefta from the farmer's market, which is actually ideal because it's pre-loaded with a lot of flavor. And I'm just gonna rip that up into my pan with no oil because there's gonna be so much residual oil that is rendered off this sausage. Now you always wanna think about how you can take advantage of that rendered fat. So I'll slice up a red bell pepper, and I had that red onion from the previous recipe, the quesadilla. So I'm just gonna slice that up. So you can see plenty of fat starting to release there. Quick prep over here. Now this should be done. We're nice and bright green. We don't want to go any further than that. I'm just gonna hit it with some cold water. And that should stop the cooking. Give that a toss. And we're just looking to get some nice color on this sausage. Now that the sausage is done, I will take that out of the pan and reserve that for later. And here's our fat for our onions and bell peppers, which are going right in this pan. I'll give those a nice toss and start that cooking process just to soften up and really build flavor. Now we can work on this little broccoli spread. Perfectly cooked and now cool. Give them a rough pulse. Okay. And now comes cheese, which isn't the healthiest thing, but again, we're finding a balance here. If I can get my daughter to eat broccoli and it's gonna take a little bit of cheese, that's fine. I can hold off on dairy in the rest of the meal and lighten everything else. A few hits of this. Generally, the cheese adds a good bit of salt, but I'm just gonna add a tiny bit, and that's it. That's all she wrote. Great trick to get your kid to eat broccoli. So I'm gonna use this for a little spread on a toast, which is why I'm doing all of these toppings right here. So when I was thinking about this dish, it felt like it was getting a little heavy. So to balance it out, why not make just a really quick salad? Plus, I had my first head of lettuce that was ready to harvest from the garden. And I had a bunch of radish that really bulked up over the weekend. So I figured just to lighten up this entire dish, I'm gonna throw together a really quick salad. I'm gonna take the lettuce leaves, add them to a bowl, and just quickly slice through the cucumber and the radish. And while making this salad, I can't forget about managing these peppers and onions just to make sure they don't burn. So I'll give them a few tosses. And back to the salad for a really quick dressing. I'm gonna squeeze in some lemon, a little bit of olive oil, and some Dijon mustard. Sprinkle in a little bit of salt and just lightly toss that together until the dressing is incorporated. And for the bread today, I'm using sesame semolina, which works great with sausage and peppers. And I'm gonna cut up some slices and get those in the toaster. All right, so world's quickest salad. We're gonna toss that in there. Last thing I need to do, boom, 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 boom. Okay. So to plate this up, I'm gonna take that toast. I'll spread on that broccoli ricotta mixture. And for the adult version, I'll add on the sausage and bell peppers. And I'll top that with a little bit of sauerkraut since I had some in the fridge. And finally hit that with that side salad. And for Marley's little junior version, to deconstruct things a bit, I'll use some of the fresh cucumber and then finally some fresh berries. So I know it's, you know, not the prettiest of meals, but this is home cooking. When you get home and you have 15 minutes to throw together food for your family, a lot of times this is what it looks like. Feeding, let alone caring for kids, can be pretty challenging in today's world, and that's why I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, KiwiCo, who has built a brand around keeping children engaged and educated with a very thoughtful approach. KiwiCo offers a subscription service that sends each family super cool hands-on projects and activities that help teach kids about different STEAM concepts like science, technology, engineering, art, and math. Each monthly crate comes with everything you need and it's designed by experts and tested by kids. And my daughter Marley is just about 2 years old, so she's been loving the matching animal cards and the felt animal puppets. And this tummy time mirror for my newborn Noah has kept her entertained for hours. They also offer culinary projects. I got the Science of Cooking ice cream kit and the mini decorating kit, which has been a great way to get Marley more involved in the kitchen. And in general, KiwiCo is just a great resource to have for learning at home and keeping your kids entertained without a screen. So if you're interested in trying KiwiCo, click the link below to get 50% off your first month of any subscription. And speaking of tummy time, let's get back to the recipe. So the final tip, something that I need to remind myself of all the time, is to continue to try new things with your kids. Take a risk from time to time because it's so easy to just get stuck in the routine, making the same things that your kids eat. But if you just keep doing that, they'll never try anything new. My daughter, she'd been holding off on eating meat, but I was determined to get her to eat some meat. So I figured the best way to do that was a chicken finger. It's on every kid's menu that has pretty much ever existed, but the key for this chicken finger is to craft something that can be done quickly throughout the week. So what we're gonna rely on is that machine right there. I'm gonna be using a plastic cutting board because I'm dealing with some raw chicken, and I've got 2 chicken breasts right here. And the first thing I'm gonna do is just dry this off as well as you can. And I'll rip off that chicken tender. That is the actual chicken tender. That's where the term comes from. And it's a great way to kind of get the sizing right. So as I'm slicing through this chicken, I'm just keeping that initial chicken tender size in mind until I have a bunch of little tendies. So I'm gonna fill a bowl with some AP flour and toss in the chicken tenders until they are fully coated. The idea here is to make the quickest breading possible. It doesn't have to be a perfect assembly line. It doesn't have to be perfectly seasoned. Get it done. It's 15 minutes. So I'll crack in 2 eggs to another bowl and I'll whisk them together. And the final piece of the breading is cornflakes. All right, looking around for my bashing utensil of choice. What's in here? I'll go with a pan. And I'm just gonna smash these cornflakes until they are nice and pulverized. All right, that works great. So you want a mix of like some finer powders in there, which you can see, and then definitely some of those bigger crispy pieces. So now to really speed up this process, got our chicken, dip it in the egg, into there. I don't wanna overcrowd. Let's try 6 at a time. Shake. And I also like to just kind of press it in. Really get that nice coating. Check that out. Oh yeah. Round 2. And that is how you make quick tendies. I'm gonna take these over the air fryer. It's too loud. Oh, it's all right. They're fine. So I'm gonna take these over to the air fryer. And what I like to do is I pop a few in there. You don't wanna overcrowd. So that amount is good for a meal for my wife and I, plus my daughter. I give them a spray with some oil, and then I'll flip them. And I'll spray again. Now we're coated. I'll go 375, and since they're pretty thin, they only really need 7-8 minutes. Now while that's cooking, I'm gonna go over to the fridge to build out the adult meal. Some oranges and a bunch of these pantry ingredients for a quick orange sauce. Everything can just be built out in something like this. This is an orange chicken sauce, so of course at the base, we've got some oranges. Juice those in. If you get some orange in there, that's all right. Some soy sauce, rice vinegar, a little bit of mirin, sesame oil, a little bit of chili sauce. Now I just realized that I forgot the cornstarch, which is so essential to thickening the sauce when it hits the pan. Whoops. There's your chicken tendies. So what I'm gonna do, I've got cassava flour. It's the closest thing I have to a starch. So I'll add just a little bit more, hope for the best. I'm also gonna add a little bit of water. Shake, and there's your sauce. So I actually had some rendered chicken fat from a whole chicken that I broke down. And I'm gonna saute some bok choy. So I'll just quickly click off those leaves, get them in a pan, and start stir frying. And what I love about bok choy is that it only takes 2 minutes to get nice and tender. You do not wanna overcook your bok choy, especially because we are about to add sauce, which is gonna cook it even more. Forgot something. I knew something was off. Needs a little bit of sweetness. I'm just adding some honey in there. Whip out the scissors, chop up little chunks. Look at that. And that's how you take chicken fingers off the kids menu. This is just the best. Now, the wonderful thing about chicken fingers is once you have these, you build out a meal like this today. This was my lunch, chicken finger salad. I have been loving this recipe and the fact that it works for both parties. And remember, it's not about these exact recipes. The goal is to understand these tips so you make food that your family likes, that your kids are excited about, and there will be days that suck. Everything I have taught you today is stuff that I've just learned on my own over the last few years of struggling to cook for kids. But when I look at my daughter now, it's kind of crazy. She eats so much more food than she did a month ago or 3 months ago, and it just keeps getting better. And now I have a new baby who will eat solid food in a few months, and I'll start the whole goddamn journey over again. Oh, it's crazy being a parent, but yeah, that's the game. So I will see you in the next video.